good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment, right? So when you fail as much as I fail, at some point, you start to recognize, success leaves clues, right? And at some point, you just realize the mistake is an investment if you make it once and you fix it. It's an expense if you just keep making it over and over again.
Less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor interview.
Episode 160. Can you believe that?
Wow.
And
I participated in at least 20 of those.
Oh.
Hey, I talked to that fraud lady about client, but she's more than willing to get on again. She said, yeah, I never saw that. And I said, I know. I said, we were looking for it, but anyway, she said, yeah.
Wow, we recorded, maybe we had issues with the recording or something. And
I absolutely, she remembered it. I remember it
too.
She used to be with the FBI.
Yeah.
But we had all those screw ups back then, remember?
Yeah, I think it was one of the first ones.
And they were.
It wasn't in person. It was online.
No, it was online.
Yeah. I think that was before we were on Riverside. We were on Zencaster, if I remember.
Oh, yeah. It was, I think Ethan was doing it. Remember, they were trying to match up and it was coming in chunks or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, she would be really, really good.
Okay.
Chris, do you have fraud in your company?
I have experienced fraud in my company.
Okay.
I don't
How
practice
many employees do you have?
I did have an HR person 30 days after she started with us. I was fortunate. I got clipped for $21,000 over the next 3 or 4 months before we caught it. But I have friends, one right now, who's finding over 7 years, almost $700,000 was taken. And there was a well-respected woman. This has just made headlines this past month. She's not with the same company. She left 3 years ago, but her old company is now suing her for embezzling $2.2 million, which she's claiming not guilty. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch.
Wow.
Listeners understand because I've said it before, but one of my companies, bookkeeper took $340,000. And I'm very attentive to things, but I wasn't attentive enough. We actually got the money back. But when I delivered that to the detectives, what you do is you call out a police officer. They come out and file a report. The guy told me, he goes, hey, $340,000, we're not even going to ever get to this. He said, if you want this prosecuted, you have to lay out the debits and the credits and the timeline with no doubt, and we'll pursue it. And so I did.
Wow.
And she went to jail.
That's crazy.
And yeah.
Well, speaking of fraud, for someone that works with on podcasts with both of you, I need to talk about the banging on the desk that we do. Just in the first minute, listeners are gonna be like, man, what's that banging noise? Martin clicking his pen at the desk, Chris making his point, banging the table.
Once I get to
throw you guys into the
once
bus.
I get the Tomahawks going, look out. There may be debris flying around, Khalil.
Oh, man. This is exciting. I'm glad to have both of you on. Always enjoy talking to each of you, but it's unique that we get both of you in the room. And the first time that you guys get to meet in person, I have a feeling Chris knows a lot more about Martin than Martin knows about Chris. Because Chris, you've listened to us for a while now.
Absolutely.
Even like pre-pandemic, I think. So
yeah, big fan. And I'll tell you, hopefully as we get into our discussion, I'll share why. I mean, I knew we were going to be rebuilding from ashes. And I just found it very comforting, not just the topics, the cadence and the style. I mean, I agreed with everything you were talking about, but as somebody that was coming back as a business owner, and I was much more focused as an owner working on the company, not an employee working in the company. So everything I was hearing resonated as the guy that was leading the rebuilding. And so super grateful, guys, seriously, for all the information. I can only imagine the rest
glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing how that happens whenever your whole business gets shut down. All of a sudden you have time to work on your business.
And I love your self-deprecating humor. When Martin goes, we've 160 episodes. We've acquired tens of listeners, right? And you go, come on, I know there's more than that.
Yeah. Something that you said just there, coming back and working on the business and into business. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure that you've known that forever.
Yes.
That people should work on and not in,
Absolutely.
but you get pulled away. My dad, my father, had a quote he used all the time from Robert Frost, who was walking down a street in New York City after a party with a woman named Elizabeth Peabody. She was a Manhattan socialite. And she walked into a tree and knocked her over backwards. And he knelt down beside her and said, "Elizabeth, didn't you see the tree?" And she said, "Yes, Robert, I saw it, but I didn't realize it." Right? The point being, you knew that all this something, there's that old Chinese saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, the teacher's always been there. You just didn't realize it. But then something like pandemic comes along and says, "Hey, pay attention. Realize this, buddy." And so anyway,
Well, and I think some of the
that's what
things
came to mind.
I think some of the things that we're going to talk about today will probably resonate with contractors because, you are a contractor in a sense. We'll get to that, Chris.
Absolutely.
But it's very different as far as what the pandemic was like. For a lot of our listeners, business really ramped up. But I've had more calls in the last couple of months from contractors about things slowing down and not feeling as scheduled out for 3, 4, 6 months in advance. And maybe ready to get started doing some more marketing and stuff like that. And so you're kind of on the opposite side of that, where you're getting inundated with calls now because you had that slowdown. So I think it'll be interesting to hear some of the things that you did during that downtime and what some of our listeners might be able to do if things do slow down for them as people start to go on vacations and use that disposable income on other things, that home improvement projects or whatever it is. So it should be interesting to hear some of those strategies. And that's one of the main things I want to get to. But at first, I want to talk about your business as a whole and maybe giving our audience of contractors who are used to working on, a physical location that's going to be there for decades, hopefully, centuries maybe, and give them a little taste of what it's like to work on something that is there for a week at most. Because that's really what your business is like. You build something temporarily, right?
Absolutely. First of all, and again, I want to thank you guys for inviting me to join this. Love the show, love this discussion. So, in a few words, my company, my parent company, which is called Tradeshow Supply, we design and build exhibits and all the things that go in it, the furniture, the AV, the graphic messaging. We design and build those for trade shows, corporate events, and other business events. So to Khalil, to your point, usually that's for a temporary environment. We do find ourselves doing a little bit of work in the permanent installation, museums, corporate lobby stuff. But for the most part, we build portable branch offices that are going to be up for 2 to 5 days at a national trade show or a sales meeting or a business conference. I've got guys in 4 locations in Orlando and 3 locations in Las Vegas just today. One of the events has been 2 days to move in for a 4-hour event. And then it all comes down. So, but this is a big brand company that is bringing in all their salespeople. They had just made a sizable acquisition of another competitor. And so they want to do a show and tell for those people at a 1-day conference. So, this is really one of the things we learned in pandemic was, a lot of opportunity for us, we've learned, is not on the trade show floor. Khalil, I think you and I talked about this in June of 2020. Major League Soccer was sort of relaunching. And so they came to us and said, we're going to take over a couple of Disney hotels, 10 teams. We need 10 training rooms inside the hotel. We need 14 media rooms. And by the way, you're the only guy in town that has 850 portable walls. They walked into my office, the agency, on a Tuesday, and the setup started on Monday. So,
Wow.
And
anyway,
that was the bubble-esque, like the
right,
NBA
that
had
was
their
when the
bubble
and
down
you
in
remember
Florida.
the NBA, LeBron James, all that.
Right,
We did some stuff for the NBA, but so earlier at the break, Martin was asking me, what are the kinds of things you did during the pandemic? We were looking for a pivot. Our industry, everybody was running to creating acrylic PPP protective components
Shields.
for restaurants and banks, and we had a couple of bids over for the hockey rink for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Other people that make fabric graphics were making masks. We got a ton of calls from the hospitals for temporary, medical and COVID check-in rooms and screening rooms. And, in the end, none of it was right for us. But I think I forget where the expression came from, but they say even a drowning man will grab the blade of a sword to try and save himself. We saw a lot of companies on our industry just rushing to do whatever. And we never really did find a good fit other than things like the occasional Major League Soccer event and that kind of thing. So, so anyway,
it's great
that's
to
what
hear
we do.
that.
Good news is we're now back and active. I like to say we're back and busy, although we're not clean and pretty. We still have all those disruptions, but designing and building trade show exhibits and all the services that go with that, the project managing, the build work, the transportation services to and from the event venue. We have a division that does the labor, what we call the installation and dismantle service, setting it up and taking it down. So prior to pandemic, guys, that was the majority of what we did. We did what we call I&D, install and dismantle labor, for builders all over the world that were coming to a footprint in about 12 U.S. cities. Labor's a tough market. 7 of those cities require union contracts. So imagine you're having to fulfill and expand. I have a core group of 4 to 6 guys in every city we worked in, but a big show like a ConEd, ConExpo comes in, and I've got to expand to 50 guys for the amount of work that we have. And everybody's expanding. So that's a period, and I'm sure some of your contractor listeners can appreciate when you've got a lot of work going on. We deem those days bring a friend to work day and bring a friend's grandmother to work day. But we get those peaks, but that's a big part of the systems we've had to create, is how to expand and contract that labor funnel as the work. And a lot of trade shows are seasonal, right? So we've got to be ready for that. So, but so building I&D labor, I would say post-pandemic, we have made the choice to move up market and work with fewer, I would say for us, it's better customers. We want to be more in service to fewer partners. And so we're doing a lot more turnkey build work rather than just the labor only work. And it's been wonderful. For us, it's been a complete reversal of fortune since pandemic. And I listen to your show avidly because I don't want to go back to the way it was before. I want to keep moving forward in a profitable way. So
well, I think what will be helpful for listeners to understand is the different challenges that you face. Even though you've got crews, you're building things, you've got customers that have needs, it's a little bit different and unique what the challenges are that you face. I think something that Martin and I have talked about a lot on this show is the value of timing with your projects and getting things on a schedule and focusing on, days to build and trying to lower that timeline a lot. For you, it's like you have a deadline and you cannot miss that deadline. The impact of missing that deadline is a lost customer and paying back money and all sorts of things, I'm sure. But talk about, I think the main challenges I want to hear about are the value of timing for you guys and how you make timing work, the value of the order of operations, what happens if you don't do things in the right order, and what that may look like for the customer, and then how you avoid kind of that scope creep as well. Because when things change on the job for you, it can really completely ruin the event. I know that you've got hookups to power inside there, and if you don't do it at a certain time, and if they want to make a change to whatever, it can make a huge difference. So talk about some of those challenges that you face with your customers and your projects that you work on.
No, great conversation. So, thinking about some of the contractors listening right now, if you're building a pool in somebody's yard or you're doing a major landscape contract and you need dry weather, right? I'm sure your customer doesn't like it if you have to push some of the work back a few days, but they can understand that, and hopefully they show you grace and patience. When a trade show or a business event is taking place and they've bought out a hotel like the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, or the event is just happening, you've got to make it work. So um, I'm sure every contractor in every sector has some variables. We've actually tracked this when we're building what we call an island exhibit. So, smaller structures we build are in a 10 by 10 space, 10 by 20, 10 by anything is called an inline exhibit. An island is 20 by 20, 30 by 40, 50 by 80 space. So by the way, the industry refers to my company, as an exhibitor appointed contractor. So there is a general contractor who's responsible for moving in. They get a bare concrete convention center that, let's say Las Vegas, 1 million square foot hall, and they have to return it that way 14 days from when they take possession of it, right? So they pre-mark the floor and they set up the pipe. They move all the freight in and out. If I have 10 projects at that, I have to work within the boundaries of the general contractor, but I'm the exhibitor appointed contractor for those defined spaces, and I'm responsible for everything there, except there are some services like electrical, like the material handling of the freight, like any plumbing or water work that's exclusive to the general contractor. So I'd say one of the things that challenges us, Khalil, is we average between 7 and 15 variables on every project that we have little to no direct control over. I cannot control how quickly the union electricians at Las Vegas Convention Center show up or how long they take to hang the 10 lights. My guys can hang them, wire it, and hide all the wiring in 90 minutes. They may take 2 days. So if we don't have everything staged to really give us every advantage for those sort of what we call the known unknowns, okay, then the cost overruns and the domino effect can start costing money everywhere else. I'll give you another example. We always ask a client we're building for, you've ordered, you have a hanging sign that flies above your exhibit space, and an exclusive service is the general contractor does the rigging. Their team comes over and has to fly the sign. You need to have put a special form and an order and get that paid for, hopefully prior to the show, so they have that scheduled. If you wait and don't send that order in until we show up on day one of a 4-day move-in, you get in line, you find out you are number 137 in line. And so you've insisted that my team shows up on Friday morning, straight time. The move-in's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we okay. And let's just say this is at Mandalay Bay. And the way rigging is done there is through boom lifts. Well, those booms have to come into the space your structure's going to be built. So we really can't start building until the sign is flown, because if we build the structure first, the boom can't necessarily get in and position the sign the right way. So here's an example. Just not filling out the form and getting that in early okay, so now we're going to have to cut the crew because I can't work today because we're going to wait all day for a boom lift. And now the crew gets paid under a union contract a 4-hour minimum. So you're paying for 16 man hours for guys to do nothing and they go home. Now they got to show up Saturday or Sunday if it takes 2 days. And now you're paying time and a half because that's what the contract rate is, right? So this is I'm giving you one little snapshot of some of the variables we have. So to your point, if we don't have ironclad planning or systems in place to make sure we're capturing that, I know you guys are big systems guys. And the phrase I've always used is systems manage people and managers manage systems. If you don't have a system, then people manage people. And you know what happens, Khalil? there's a long line that shows up at your door, or Martin's door, or my door. And ultimately I become the problem because the bottleneck shows up, here. And for those listeners, I used to think, I've got some young people who, I say the word system and they think it's a software. Well, we all use that for efficiency. A system is not software. A system is just an agreed upon method of how you do business with each other in your own company, right? So certainly we can agree on how the baton gets passed from design to estimating to project management to then back to the client for review to then back in for changes to be made and ultimately re-estimate it. And when it's finalized, the baton is then, we have an area that we call handover circle. So, there's a whole lot of activity during what we call the pursuit and solicitation phase of a project. And then once we get it done and we collect all the data so we can have a clean order that goes through handover circle into production, now it goes into production, but that's what we want, clean orders going through production. So Martin, I know Martin's got to be, I'm picturing Martin's leg like a puppy under the table right now going, I got to get in on this.
No, every word you speak is gold. For our listeners who, you mentioned there are 15, I think.
Variables.
Variables.
So we have little to no direct control of.
I'm thinking of a guy right now who builds swimming pools, has for 2 or 3 years, is his contract and his checklists. I said, look, I don't know everything. His first contract for a pool didn't mention fences, sprinkler systems, or gas lines. Well, guess who repaired the fence, repaired the sprinkler system, and repaired the gas lines, right?
Yeah.
Well, now they all mention that. So his contract and his checklists are growing with experience.
Absolutely.
And you've wasted that experience if you don't capture it. That's what I was after. How the heck did you do that?
Well, I'm sure you've heard this expression, but I'm living proof of it. Good judgment comes from experience, Martin, and experience comes from bad judgment, right? So when you fail as much as I fail, at some point you start to recognize, success leaves clues, right? So you start to recognize what you have to do, and you just don't want to make the mistakes. I'm a fan and student of listening to, sales trainers like going back to Tom Hopkins and Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar. I'm a fan of organizational systems experts, and at some point you just realize the mistake is an investment if you make it once and you fix it. It's an expense if you just keep making it over and over again, right? So we did begin to write things down, and that was the key, right? Because somebody once told me that anything in writing is an agreement, and agreements prevent disagreements. And so when I put something in writing and I start sharing this with employees and supervisors and managers, now we've got an agreement of the way we're going to be doing things. And, I now that I'm out and I do some speaking in our industry as a incoming association president, and I talk to a lot of young people who are starting in this industry. So if you build 5 exhibits a month or a quarter, you're like the farmer's insurance guy, a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two. But
right.
When you build 55 projects a month in the same cities, experiencing the same variables, you really start to zero in and know where to make your investment in pre-planning. Because I've just accepted, Martin, that the type of business I am, right? So I'm in the fulfillment business for others. So I'm accepting the risk. And so when they outsource and give us a project to build, even when we move into the show, we've had exhibit house partners look at us and they see these rolling stacks of ladders and job boxes and they go, "Oh my gosh, this is all for my project?" And we go, "No, 50% of this is for your project. The other 50% we hope we're not going to need," right? But hopefully you never have to find out how good we really are. Right.
Really?
Because we look like the 82nd Airborne when we're moving in for a show. And by the way, if we're doing 8 or 10 or 20 projects at a show like a ConAgCon Expo, we really move everything out there. And even that is not enough in a city. Like for us, we're now at of a volume size where I've got to have a shop within 10 or 15 minutes because at night, when somebody ships something in and two,
Broke.
acrylic wings get cracked or broken, we've got to run back and we have to have that in inventory. We have to have saws that can cut it to precision.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's so how we all those mistakes, right, lead up to starting to document some things. And by the way, I'm going to share with you right now, this is where I'm at. I am loving a recent series you guys did called The 9 Essentials of an Organized Business. And so it's got me I know what a vision is, a statement is, I know what a mission is, but I was one of those guys that looked for the really robust 3-paragraph vision that covers every scenario that says, yeah, we really are all things to all people. But you know what? Here's what I can now say, and I can say it in a way that my employees could even memorize it. My vision is to build a company that is the most valuable outsource partner to exhibit house and ad agencies that do business in the trade show and the business event space. How do we do that? Well, that's our mission, right? We do that by making the lives easier of the project managers, sales reps, and operations people that we do business with that give us projects. And how do we make their lives easier? Relentless, constant innovating our own processes and systems, making it easier to do. And by the way, I believe if you do that, any contractor, your processes and systems become a mechanism of you attracting new customer. More than your deliverables, how you are doing business becomes the most valuable thing. You're able to create relationships with your clients that are not easily duplicated by your competitors.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
How do you, a little bit of on a pragmatic side, how do you actually record them? Do you write them
So,
down?
the struggle is real. And the struggle for me was so much of that is what the lizard nest in my brain, Martin, is always kicked over. And so I was the guy that would think about him and I'm scratch padding and I'm this. And ultimately we got to a size where, I had hired an administrative operations leader whose job was to document not only put these in writing, but then the job descriptions to make sure. And again, that's another thing we're revisiting right now is by the way, this is not a position that ad ops director, I've not hired that position back yet. I'm only at about 70% of the head count of where we were, which is probably one of the reasons we're wildly profitable. I have better people, but there's gaps everywhere in my dedicated marketing. Khalil hears me wax poetic about this regularly. It's an important position. And, we're sort of using some freelancers right now until we're at a point where the critical operations positions are hired. But hear me now, you can't ignore the need to do these things, but I'm feeling every day that I don't have that person.
Enough.
And because the
more.
systems have changed, Martin, right? We're a different company. We do business differently. Our offering is expanded or different. And so it requires us doing a better job putting things in writing and then training and onboarding.
And just for a lot of our smaller listeners, the place you will capture those is in your contract and in your checklist that your project managers use. I mean, that's,
yes,
we definitely need more than that, need job descriptions, all that. But I really like to see people capture it in their contracts, that at least you're dealing with these issues you're going to deal with.
Even, listen, we were all small business contractors to begin with. We were all soloists before we were small business owners. So what the issues are. And so, I do feel the need, and I remember Khalil talking about a 3-3-3 plan about how you try and find time in your day to work on, things other than the tyranny of the urgent stuff, which by the way shows up every hour of every day. But you've got to find the time. Just keep a journal. Just write down the things that caused you pain today, last week, when you get some time. From that note taking, you know how you fixed it or what you need to do or what you can do better. but it starts with just documenting that, that, that pain. And whether it's, hiring somebody to help you put that in an organized, written way, or you find the time. I know when you're starting, it's so hard not to be a guy working in your company. We all want to work on it, but it took me, decades before I can say that's now my full-time job. And by the way, it's liberating when you get to that point. It really is. It feels incredible. And yet I still get pulled in. Um, and I hope we have a minute to talk about this. So everybody listening right now has sort of the known unknowns. Weather might be one for contractors, a certain type of material that is inconsistent on lead time delivery. So there's the known unknowns, but it's the unknown unknowns that I am finding post-pandemic that are showing up more often. And I'll give you a great example. This current banking crisis, right? So I literally finally had a week off this year. And in the middle of that, you saw the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. And then the second one did. And so I told Khalil the story. I said, holy cow, I'm with a bank that's owned by one of the banks is owned by Zion Bank. And I was reading those guys there's a run on deposits coming up. Are we insured? Well, you go, okay, FDIC insured for $250,000. What I learned was the insurance is for $250,000, not per account, but per account holder. So
Aggregate.
if you do what Cash Flow for Contractors preaches is you have a payroll account, you have a sales tax account, you have a cost of goods sold account, you have a savings account. When I added up all the money in all those accounts at the bank, we were way more than that. And so I'm going, we've got to figure out, what are we going to do? What's our strategy for storing excess cash that we need for the business? By the way, Martin, were you ever imagining when you started a company, your problem would be storing excess cash? I'm like, that's not me. I'm never going to be the guy with too much cash. But you know what?
Yeah.
As you grow, you may find. So anyway, there's an unknown. And that became a big part of my job for a week as we decided, okay, we have an investment account at Schwab, and, there's a $500,000 protection with a money market. So let's move it there. And, keep enough in the accounts that it's under 250, but it's payroll but the other stuff I can access within 48 hours if I need. So anyway, it's just a really weird time in business right now if you're a small business.
There was another unknown that happened, 2020, was it? Spring of 2020? What the heck was that? And you kind of referred to it already, Chris. A lot of contractors, as a result of this unknown,
I refer to that period as
have thrived, but it shuts you down.
That which shall not be named, Martin, is what we call March of 2020. Yeah. Would any of us ever have imagined? I mean, it's a science fiction movie, a global pandemic that literally shut down an industry. One of the things my industry, and I always took pride in, is I don't think any industry is recession proof, but we always said the trade show industry was recession resistant because with 13,000 shows in every kind of horizontal and vertical market you can imagine, if finance was down, manufacturing was up. If healthcare was down, then consumer goods shows were raging. Whatever the case was, I never dreamed crowds would be outlawed. Never imagined that. Right. So I will tell you now, I'm buying the alien invasion insurance, Martin, because it's the only thing left is the Will Smith, Independence Day scenario, right?
Yeah.
And I was reminded by somebody the other day, oh no, there's films of UFOs. That's already happening. So probably can't get the insurance for that.
Tell us a little bit about, you've referenced and alluded to it, just your business before the pandemic. And you said you were all things to all people, kind of, just to describe a little bit of what the operation looked like, how big you were, how many projects you were running, what profit margins were like, all that kind of stuff.
So, before pre-pandemic, we were, or BC, before COVID, And AD is after discovery of a new business model. So in 2018, as an example, we did business with 381 customers that year. 60% of my business was what we called labor-only jobs, which averaged about $2,800 per job. The rest, we were doing rental builds for a mix of exhibit house partners and still some brand side exhibitors. But we were so conscious to never encroach on our partners' clientele. We actually kept a separate database, which was a couple of 100,000 deep. And if we ever did an I&D labor job for a company for, Flex Systems, if Flex Systems ever called us directly, we would say, back away. We can't work with you. Even if that partner never worked with Flex Systems anymore. It's just what we did to feel like we weren't betraying our customers. So what we found was the end user exhibitors that were finding us were the downstream customers, the orphaned exhibitors that didn't have any professional help with their trade show exhibit program. And by the way, these are the discount your way to victory customers, the leave you for $100 cheaper customers, the shop you every year customers, even if you did a great job. It was miserable. But we were chasing revenue for the sake of revenue because we thought revenue was the answer to Shangri-La, to getting to where we wanted to be. So that revenue monkey would climb as high up in the tree, and we would keep climbing and building infrastructure, ladders, steps, to try and keep up with them. And so fixed costs were going up. By the way, I'm teeing up for my wonderful experience in the death spiral, guys, because that was a really interesting time. But so my point is, my brother Dan and I, who's an executive with my company, we went around the country into all the major markets where we had partners, and the Griffin brothers came in, and we brought in Panera catered breakfast, and we brought in catered lunches, and we said, here's who we are moving forward, and here's who we're not. And I remember we were in the Philly area, Philadelphia, and we walked in, and we were with 10 project managers and account managers having our Panera breakfast. And we were saying this to this company. We said, just so you know, guys, we no longer are going to be doing this. This is what our focus is going to be. And the head of project management, in the middle of a bite of a blueberry muffin, she goes, are you breaking up with us? Are these breakup muffins? And we said, we're not breaking up, but we're just clarifying. And so here's my point. From 381 customers, the next year, we dropped to 171 customers we did business with. Cut them in half, more than half. Our revenue grew in 2019, 15%. No big deal. Everybody grew in 2019. Our profits, our earnings climbed 400%. Martin, last year in 2022, we were the most profitable we've ever been. We did business with 45 customers. And I'm not saying shrink your way to success, guys, but you know what the change was? We started choosing better customers. We did this because we wanted the joy back in our lives. We were burning ourselves out, our employees out with these, with chasing every type of revenue, and by the way, when we did that, we'd find 20 projects in the shop in one of our locations, but then one of our best customers would call and we didn't have the capacity to take on their project. So we said, I want the joy back in my life. Let's say no, thank you. Let's define what that is. Let's create a system for the kind of work we want and the kind of people we want to work with. And so moving to that, I can't tell you how happy I am. And again, I know you guys get it because you remind me of it. Profit's not a dirty word. I'm not gouging people if we're making money. We charge a fair price. We deliver exceptional service and offerings. And, and I'll say no right now to more work than I'm saying yes to make sure I'm leaving capacity for those 45 partners that really are all in on us. So I'm all in with them. So that's kind of been the morphing and the evolution of who we become.
That is such a tipping point. I'll send you a quote I've got, and I can't remember. Future Proof Your Business. I can't remember the author's name, but he made a decision, and I've got it highlighted and got a picture on my phone. And he said he made a list, and he sat down and wrote an email, and 60% of them. They said, we're no longer operating in this space. We'll help you. He said, I clicked send on New Year's Eve, and poof, 60% of his customers were gone.
Which is
And
really
since
unnerving.
Then, tenfold net. Yeah. Well, and what the real lesson here is at some point, you reach a point that I'm not chasing the discount. I mean, you're not going to be chasing that discount customer that's going to shop you for $100 and slow pay you or no pay you, or you're going to complain. You finally decide, I've had it. I'm going to do this to make money. On your website, you talk at one point in there that one of your goals is to have fun.
Absolutely.
Well, profit's not a sin, and neither is having fun.
By the way,
And a lot of
profits
times
are fun.
making profit
Profit's
is fun.
Martin.
Yeah, it really is. All the stress, lots of clients and past and present, that just this weight on your shoulders. If you're highly profitable, the same weight doesn't weigh anything.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, but you can also afford solutions, bring in the right people, things like that. But that's gold.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we should make just an episode out of those words and air that separately, Khalil, just so everybody hears that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it'll be a great clip. I think something else that I want to mention that we've talked about, Chris, separately from here, is payroll creep. And I think it's a big thing that is, people are susceptible to whenever they are growing, whenever they're experiencing really profitable seasons, whenever there's a huge demand for their product or their service. And I think that there's probably a lot of contractors out there that for the past couple of years have really experienced a lot of growth in their company, and they've had to hire and even hire people at higher price points than they typically were used to because of the way the labor market looked. And now things are slowing down a little bit. And I know people are probably feeling that payroll creep a little bit more, but maybe explain what that is and what you're trying to do to avoid it. Now you're operating, like you said, at 70% of where you used to be in terms of staff. So yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, so that keeps me awake at night right now is payroll creep. Making payroll used to keep me awake at night. And so I'm not sweating that. I'm not sweating that as much as I worry about not applying the discipline of what we've learned, really through, the chase revenue at all cost days and the ad infrastructure and really ending up in the death spiral. And just for a reminder for any of the listeners, if there's any of my listeners that hear this, by the way, guys, just so you know, Martin, I'm so influential, I can bring you tens and tens more listeners.
With your podcast, which will be in the show notes.
But really, just as a reminder, the death spiral is when you're managing your company where you must get new deposits for tomorrow's projects in now to finish paying for jobs you're doing this month or even cleaning up jobs from last month. So you really don't get to, so that begins a process where you're using tomorrow's money to pay for yesterday's jobs. And there's no happy ending if that happens. If you guys haven't heard the CFC, the Catch-All Contractor episode on that, run to that one if that's you. Because
I told Chris before the episode that for every time he mentioned something about a previous CFC episode, I'd give him $100, and his bill is really running up right
Isn't
now.
there supposed to be an animated dollar sign that comes up every time I
cha-ching.
get one of those?
Yeah. Will you take a check, a written check?
You're one of those guys. You're what we call.
I'm one of those guys.
You're what we call no thank you business. I think we need to make this, as Khalil would say, a necessary ending.
A necessary ending, exactly. No,
There
what
we
we'll
go.
do is we'll get next month's ad sponsors to pay for this month's episode with you.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Well, but to answer your point about payroll creep, so right now I'm trending what my revenue was in 2018. Actually, we're better than that at the 6-month mark this year. And I'm doing that with 21 full-time employees back when it was 31 full-time employees last time. And I'm not saying I need the other 10. We're working like hell, Martin, to figure out a model that I have better people So, and and I think they're getting paid more. Some of that is market conditions. Some is it because they've got a higher skill set as critical thinkers. So I don't know if my total payroll is a third less. Well, I know it's not a third less, but what I love is from where we're applying what we learned in the Death Spiral days, because we challenge each other. My leadership team challenges each other. And a leadership team is a fancy word for saying these are the people that you lean on in your company to help you make important. Do we really need that? Do we need another project manager, or do we need a production manager? Do we need a field operations supervisor, or do we need an estimator or a CAD guy? Project managers are doing estimating. My project managers in the last 60 days have done 120 estimates. So the question is that, they go, we need an estimator or help estimating. And I go, so guys, 62% of our revenue typically comes in the first 6 months of the year, historically, 38% in the second half. Are we feeling just the high season push now? So if I ran out and hired that full-time estimator, would we need him as much in the second 6 months? I love that internally we're having this discussion and we're challenging every addition to the payroll. Whereas before, if it was painful enough, we just went out and got them. Obviously not happening as quickly because you can't find them as quickly. But this is to your point. I call it payroll creep. We're profitable. I paid out great bonuses in the first quarter, and by the way, I did that because I believe that my employees should share in the upside as it's happening if they're doing the work. So in a way, it's an incentive to take on the new behaviors I'm asking you to. My job's to come before you every quarter and report the State of the Union, and I will tell you this is who we are and this is what we're doing. Here's what you get. Quick sidebar on this, Martin. So I didn't want to wait to the end of the year to pay out because I know that's too abstract for some people. But I also didn't want to pay full quarterly bonuses if we don't hit our goals in the other quarters. So what we ended up doing, and if you're a contractor listening about possibly doing something like this, so quarter by quarter, we say, here's what we've earned. We're going to pay you half of what your bonus is for the quarter, and the other half will carry forward. If we keep hitting the goal, that'll happen every quarter. And in the fourth quarter, you get the full fourth quarter payout, and you get the carry forwards from 1, 2, and 3. If we underperform, you're still going to get something, but the company's not in a position where there's a pressure to claw back. You can't claw back once you pay. So I'd love your opinion on whether that's a good idea or a bad idea. But
oh no, I think it's a brilliant idea. The connection, the prompt connection between effort and reward is critical.
Yes.
And the other thing, you didn't say it, but I know it's true, is that they see that their effort, not, you use the word abstract, not some abstract effort, their effort resulted in this benefit. You can't claw back. I think that's brilliant. There are certain ways that people give golden handcuffs, like you get your bonus three months later, or I guess it'd be 3 quarters in your case, and so you get to look at it and make sure it's real, but they have an idea. I think it's brilliant.
And by the way, again, practicing what Khalil's preaching to me all the time, still got to have competitive compensation, right? On salary or hourly wage, still got to have, benefits. You've got to make sure that a person can maintain or exceed, improve a quality of life thing. So I'm conscious that we've added a tier 1 healthcare program in January. We have never had, but finally have activated a retirement plan product, which for us was a simple IRA. That was the recommendation we got. And so, but because we rolled out a profit sharing plan, we said there's a cap on, so if it's normally, up to 3%, we put a cap on $2,000 of matching towards retirement, $2,000 a year. So if you're a $100,000 guy, we could, by law, we could contribute up to $3,000 or 3% of that, but we're capping it at 2 because we're doing the profit sharing. And I put it to the employees and I go, I can beef up your retirement, but it's probably going to change the nature of what we're doing on the profit sharing, which is a very healthy plan. everybody loved to keep the profit sharing. They
Right.
were thrilled with the retirement. And oh, by the way, the other benefit, and maybe another episode we can come back and talk about what are we doing on talent acquisition and how do you recruit and keep the ones you have and all that stuff. So we've also added a mortgage assistance program, which, by the way, if you're an owner and you're listening, this costs me nothing. But we have a friend who's a top mortgage broker. It's a great company. And they said, we as a mortgage company, if you have any employees that want to buy a home or refi, we will contribute $5,500 to the closing costs. Doesn't cost the company anything. This is not just a broker, but they're also the lender, the financer. It's a large group. And they will offer this, by the way, they're finding in the strain in their industry, they're looking not just to real estate brokers to help them get clients. They're looking at small businesses. And I thought, okay, this is an interesting thing. So Khalil, we can share that in the notes later if you want to know.
I'm having a lunch today in 3 hours with a mortgage bank, and that's going to be on the list.
It's a great, Anyway, I thought it was, and by the way, I
literally.
might only have 3. I know I have got one guy. He said he's got 2 young boys, and he goes, they're sharing a bedroom, and we need a bigger place. So I know he's thinking about it. I have another executive who went through a divorce a few years ago, and the house was sold in the process of that. He's rented a place, and he goes, man, I hate not paying myself. So whether this happens or not, for a large, I think it makes a statement to your employees. And by the way, this company created a website landing page with my brand name on it and theirs. They're offering to do quarterly, monthly, annual updates from an economist to let people know this is what's happening in the housing market. Let's be honest. If you finance your house during these record, 3.5%, you're never going to refi your house again. But if you're buying a house for the first time, rates are what they are. And why not take advantage of any help you can get, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And I have to pass this on too, because earlier you said people need to understand profit is not bad.
Right.
You can't do any of this if you spend every penny of revenue on the power bill and the trucking bill and the warehouse bill, right? You have to make a profit. Have to.
You do. There's no two ways about it. And by the way, if you need to hear from a guy who tried to prove you can do it without making a profit, I'm that guy. And I'm just telling you, there's no path through there. That's a dead end street. Just let me just pay. I paid the tuition. Let me just give you the degree. Don't do it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Everything comes from experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Either yours or somebody else's, and somebody else's is generally a lot cheaper.
Well, another phrase I love to coach my young managers with is, and you'll appreciate this, and it applies to this. It's a Mark Twain quote, and it's, when you carry a cat by the tail, you learn a lesson you can learn in no other way. I can tell you what that's like, Martin, but until I go, here's your cat, right? And you just, so believe me, I've carried the cat by the tail on this one. I know what I'm talking about.
I'm a huge Mark Twain fan.
You're speaking his language, Chris.
and I have not heard that. Yeah.
Well, this has been great. I've really enjoyed connecting you guys and having you on the show. Chris, it's always great to share your story with people, especially our listeners. And I think there's so much that they can take away from your experiences, like we've talked about. Thank you for singing our praises throughout. You've also got a podcast that is really specific to your industry, but also valuable for other contractors as well. It's called Experience Builders. And would love to share that with our listeners. We've got that in the show notes where people can check you out. Also a great follow on LinkedIn, not just showcasing what he's doing on his podcast, but also regular updates from what it's like being in his space and being a business owner in the event industry. So check him out on LinkedIn. He's a great follow. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. So
I appreciate the invitation, guys. Thanks for the discussion. This is great. I'll saddle up and ride with you guys anytime.
I think we'll do that. Getting on the idea of employee compensation that's fair to everybody would be a great
episode.
Great topic.
Yeah, I know,
great episode.
Well, cool. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll see you, Chris.
Peace, guys.
Thanks for listening to The Cashflow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.